The text wasn't meant for him. When ER nurse Lena Carter finally exploded after discovering her boyfriend's ultimate betrayal, she fired off the most vicious breakup message of her life, to the wrong number. The stranger's reply made her blood run cold. 3 minutes later, someone knocked on her door. The man standing there knew her name, her address, and every dirty secret about what her ex had done. What she didn't know yet was that her boyfriend hadn't just stolen her money. He'd sold her, and the man at her door had come to collect. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far Lena's journey reaches. The fluorescent lights in Seattle Grace emergency room buzzed like angry wasps, casting their sterile glow over another 12-hour shift that had already stretched to 14. Lena Carter's feet screamed inside her worn Nikes as she updated a chart, her fifth coffee of the night leaving a bitter film on her tongue that no amount of water could wash away. "Lena, incoming trauma," barked Dr. Walsh, barely glancing up from his own paperwork. "GSW to the abdomen, ETA, 2 minutes." She nodded, muscle memory kicking in despite the exhaustion that had settled into her bones like concrete. 28 years old, and she already felt ancient. 3 years in the ER would do that. 3 years of blood and screaming and people dying on tables despite everything she did to save them. Her phone buzzed in her scrub pocket. Again. Ethan had been calling all day, but she'd been too slammed to answer. Good. Let him wait. Let him wonder. After 4 years together, he could handle her missing a few calls during a shift. The ambulance screamed up to the bay. Lena pushed through the doors into the cool October night, where rain misted everything in that particular Pacific Northwest way that never quite committed to a downpour. The paramedics were already hauling out the gurney. 23-year-old male, single, GSW to the lower left quadrant, the lead medic rattled off. BP's dropping, lost about 2 units in the field. Get him to trauma 2, Lena cut in, falling into step beside the gurney. The kid, and he was just a kid, maybe younger than 23, stared up at her with eyes glassy from shock. "Hey, stay with me. What's your name?" "Marco," he whispered. "Okay, Marco. You're going to be fine. We've got you." She'd learned to lie convincingly, somewhere around month 6 on the job. The next 40 minutes blurred into the familiar chaos of trauma response. By the time they'd stabilized Marco and shipped him up to surgery, Lena's scrubs were splattered with blood, and her hands shook slightly as she scrubbed them raw in the sink. The surgeon had given the kid 50-50 odds. Better than some, worse than others. "Go home, Carter," Dr. Walsh said, appearing beside her. "You've been here since yesterday morning." "I'm fine." "You're dead on your feet. Go." She wanted to argue, but her body had already made the decision for her. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind only the grinding exhaustion. She changed into her street clothes, jeans, and a faded Seattle University sweatshirt, and headed for the parking garage. The drive to the apartment she shared with Ethan took 20 minutes through empty streets slick with rain. She'd moved in with him 8 months ago, against her better judgment and her mother's increasingly frantic warnings. But he'd been so persuasive, so charming, talking about their future and how they could save money and build something together. That should have been her first warning. Ethan always talked a good game. The apartment was dark when she let herself in, which wasn't unusual. Ethan worked in tech sales, a deliberately vague job description that somehow allowed him to keep irregular hours and take meetings at odd times. She'd stopped asking questions about 18 months ago when it became clear he had no intention of giving straight answers. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and headed for the bathroom, desperate for a hot shower to wash away the hospital smell and the memory of Marco's terrified eyes. The water was already running when she noticed the envelope on the bathroom counter. Her name was written across the front in Ethan's careless scrawl. Something cold slithered down her spine. She picked it up with fingers that suddenly felt numb, tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper and their joint bank statement from last week. Her vision tunneled as she read the balance. $247.53. They'd had $23,000 in that account. Her savings, every extra shift she'd picked up, every holiday she'd worked, every birthday and Christmas check from her parents, all carefully squirreled away toward a down payment on a house, toward a future that had seemed, until this exact moment, actually possible. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost couldn't read the note. Lena, I fucked up. Bad. I know you're going to hate me, and you should. I got in over my head with some investments that didn't pan out. I had to use the money to cover the losses. I'm working on fixing it, I swear. I'll pay you back. I just need some time. Please don't leave me. I love you, E. The paper crumpled in her fist. Investments. He'd gambled away her future on investments. Every hour she'd stood on her feet until her back screamed. Every trauma she'd worked through with professional detachment while her soul quietly shredded itself. Every sacrifice she'd made, all of it converted into zeros in a bank account because Ethan had fucked up. The rage that rose up in her chest felt almost cleansing in its purity. It burned away the exhaustion, the sadness, the bone-deep weariness that had become her baseline state. She welcomed it. She grabbed her phone and pulled up their text thread. Her thumbs flew across the screen, composure completely abandoned. You fucking coward. You stole from me. $23,000, my entire future. And you didn't even have the balls to tell me to my face? You left a note? Her vision blurred with tears of rage. We're done. Don't come back here. Don't call me. I never want to see your face again. You're the worst mistake I ever made, and I hope you choke on whatever bullshit investment you pissed my money away on. Lose my number. She hit send before she could think better of it, then immediately blocked his number. The satisfaction was brief and shallow, but it was something. The phone buzzed almost immediately. Her heart lurched. Had the block not worked? But the number on the screen was unfamiliar. Seattle area code, but not one she recognized. Damn. Tell me how you really feel. Lena stared at the message, confusion cutting through her anger. Wrong number. She'd sent that nuclear breakup text to a complete stranger. Perfect, she muttered. Just perfect. She was typing out an apology when another message came through. For what it's worth, he sounds like he deserved every word. You okay? Something about the question made her throat tighten. No, she wasn't okay. She was the furthest thing from okay, but this stranger didn't need her problems. Wrong number. Sorry about that. I figured. But the question stands. Why was this person still texting her? She should just block this number too and throw her phone off the balcony for good measure. Instead, she found herself typing. Not really. But I'll survive. I always do. That's the spirit. For what it's worth, any guy who'd drain his girlfriend's savings is a piece of shit who doesn't deserve you. A bitter laugh escaped her. You don't even know me. Don't need to. I know enough. She should stop. She should absolutely stop engaging with this stranger. But the apartment felt too empty, too quiet, and the rage was starting to give way to something worse, a yawning sense of loss that threatened to swallow her whole. He left a note. Didn't even have the guts to tell me in person. Cowards move. You're better off. Doesn't feel like it right now. It will. Give it time. She sat on the edge of the tub, phone clutched in her hands, trading messages with this unknown number like a lifeline. It was stupid, dangerous maybe. But after the shift she'd had, after Marco and the blood and coming home to find her entire savings evaporated, she needed something to keep her from falling apart completely. Thanks. I don't know why I'm telling you any of this. Sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers. No judgment, no history. I guess. What's your name? The question should have set off alarm bells. Instead, she hesitated only a moment before typing. Lena. Pretty name. I'm... The message cut off. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Appeared again. Actually, maybe it's better if we keep this anonymous for now. That was fair. Probably smarter than she'd been, giving out her real name to a random number. But there was something oddly comforting about the mystery of it. Fine by me, mysterious stranger. Tell me about this guy. How long were you together? And somehow, she did. Sitting on the edge of the tub while the shower ran and the bathroom filled with steam, Lena found herself pouring out the whole sorry story. 4 years with Ethan. The way he'd charmed her when they met at a friend's party. How he'd seemed so different from the med students and doctors she usually dated. Less pretentious. More fun. The stranger, she'd started thinking of the number as stranger in her head, asked good questions. Not prying, just interested. How had she not noticed the warning signs? What was she going to do now? Did she have family nearby? My parents are in California, she typed. We're not really close. I've got some friends here, but nobody I want to bother with this mess at 2 a.m. You're not bothering me. Don't you have somewhere to be? It's the middle of the night. I keep odd hours. Occupational hazard. What do you do? Nothing you'd approve of. The response sent a small thrill through her that she immediately felt guilty about. She was literally in the middle of a life crisis. This was not the time to find some stranger's mysterious vagueness attractive. Try me. Let's just say I solve problems for people. The kind of problems that can't be solved through normal channels. Okay? That was either incredibly dangerous or this person was messing with her. Either way, she should probably stop. That's delightfully vague and slightly ominous. I get that a lot. Should I be worried that I accidentally texted a criminal? The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before the response came. Probably. But I'm not the one you should be worried about right now. Cryptic. I'm adding that to your list of qualities. I'm serious, Lena. This guy? Ethan. $23,000 is a lot of money to lose on bad investments. You sure that's the whole story? She frowned at her phone. What else could it be? Ethan was a lot of things. Irresponsible, selfish, apparently a thief, but she couldn't imagine what he'd need that kind of money for beyond covering his own stupidity. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that people don't usually drain their girlfriend's savings on accident. That's a deliberate choice. The question is why? Does it matter? It's gone either way. It matters if he's in deeper shit than you think. It matters if his problems are about to become your problems. A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the cooling air in the bathroom. You're scaring me. Good, you should be scared. Lock your doors. Don't let him in if he shows up. I already blocked his number. Doors, Lena. Lock them. Now. The urgency in the messages made her stand up, suddenly very aware of how alone she was in the apartment. She checked the front door. Locked. The sliding door to the balcony. Also locked. The windows were all sealed. They were on the 4th floor anyway. Done. Everything's locked. Good girl. The words sent an inappropriate flutter through her stomach. What was wrong with her? She was falling apart, clearly. Grief did strange things to people. Her phone rang. The same unknown number. Lena stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello? Hi, Lena. The voice was deep, rougher than she'd expected, with an edge that made her think of whiskey and cigarettes. I need you to stay very calm and listen to me carefully. Who are you? Someone who knows more about Ethan's situation than you do. And right now, that knowledge is the only thing standing between you and a very bad night. I don't understand. What are you talking about? Your boyfriend didn't lose your money on investments. He used it to pay off a debt he owed to some very serious people, but $23,000 wasn't nearly enough to cover what he took. Lena's legs felt unsteady. She sat back down on the edge of the tub. Took from who? The Volkov family. Russian mob. They run most of the drug trade in the Pacific Northwest, along with some other ventures that aren't relevant right now. The relevant part is that Ethan was skimming from their operation, to the tune of about $150,000. That's insane. Ethan works in tech sales. Ethan works for the Volkovs, or he did, until they found out he was stealing. Your $23,000 bought him about a week's worth of "we'll think about not killing you." But the clock just ran out. How do you know all this? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Because I'm the one they sent to collect what's owed. The bottom dropped out of her stomach. You're going to kill him? No, Ethan's already dead, has been for about 3 hours. They found him around midnight. The bathroom tilted. Lena gripped the edge of the sink to keep from sliding off the tub. You're lying. I wish I was, but I need you to focus right now because Ethan didn't just steal money. He also promised them something else to buy himself time. He promised them you. What? The word came out as a whisper. He told the Volkovs you were connected, that your family had money, that you could be leveraged for a substantial payout. It was bullshit. I've already checked you out and your family's clean, but they bought it long enough to let him walk out of their last meeting alive. And now they're coming to collect on that promise. This is insane. This isn't real. But even as she said it, she knew it was. Some part of her that had spent years reading people in crisis situations recognized the truth in his voice. It's very real, and you have about 10 minutes before they show up at your door. Then I'll call the police. And tell them what? That your dead boyfriend owed money to the Russian mob? They'll take a statement, maybe send a patrol car if you're lucky. By the time they arrive, you'll already be gone. These people are professionals, Lena. They know how to make people disappear. What am I supposed to do? The panic was setting in now, making her voice shake. You have two choices. 1. Stay there and hope I'm wrong about their timeline. Maybe the police arrive first. Maybe the Volkovs decide you're not worth the trouble. That's a lot of maybes. What's the other choice? You come with me. With you? You just told me you're a criminal. I am. But I'm not here to hurt you. The Volkovs sent me to assess the situation and report back. I was supposed to confirm that you're a viable asset. Instead, I'm giving you a chance to disappear before they decide to take you. Why would you do that? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Because Ethan was a piece of shit who sold out his girlfriend to save his own skin. And because you remind me of someone I couldn't save a long time ago. I'm not planning to make that mistake twice. This is crazy. I don't even know your name. Victor Reyes. And we're out of time for the getting to know you portion of the evening. Either you come with me right now, or I walk away and you take your chances with the Volkovs. Your choice. But you need to make it in the next 30 seconds. Lena's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She was an ER nurse. She saved lives. She didn't get tangled up with mobsters and criminals. And a noise from the hallway outside her apartment. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Lena, Victor's voice came through the phone, urgent now. Are you hearing that? Yes. That's them. Front door or balcony. Choose now. The balcony's 4 floors up. I'm on the fire escape. Open the sliding door and come with me, or stay there and see what the Volkovs have planned for you. 5 seconds. The footsteps stopped outside her front door. Lena heard voices, low, male, speaking what might have been Russian. Her body made the decision before her brain caught up. She ran from the bathroom to the living room, unlocked the sliding door, and yanked it open. A man stood on the fire escape, backlit by the city lights. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and then put through a war. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark, intense, calculating. The eyes of someone who'd seen terrible things and done worse. Lena Carter, Victor Reyes said, extending a hand. Sorry about the dramatic introduction. We really do need to go now. Behind her, something heavy hit her front door. The sound of wood splintering. She took his hand. His grip was solid, calloused, and surprisingly warm. He pulled her onto the fire escape and then started down the metal stairs with a speed that suggested he'd done this many times before. Lena followed, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. They'd made it down 2 flights when she heard her apartment door crash open above them. Shouts in Russian, heavy footfalls on the balcony. Don't look up, Victor said calmly. Just keep moving. They hit the alley at a run. Victor's hand was still clasped around hers, pulling her along with a certainty that suggested he knew exactly where he was going. They rounded a corner, then another, and suddenly he was pushing her into a black SUV with tinted windows. He slid into the driver's seat and the engine roared to life. They were moving before Lena had even gotten her seatbelt on. Stay down, he ordered. She obeyed, crouching in the passenger seat, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. She was Lena Carter. She was ordinary. This didn't happen to ordinary people. They drove in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. Finally, Victor spoke. You can sit up now. We're clear. Lena slowly straightened, looking around. They were on the highway, heading south out of the city. The dashboard clock read 3:47 a.m. Where are we going? Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant, shocky. Somewhere safe. I have a place about an hour outside the city. We'll stay there until I figure out our next move. Our next move? She turned to look at him properly for the first time. In the dim light from the dashboard, she could see the tattoos crawling up his neck from beneath his collar. His hands on the wheel were scarred. This was not a man who lived a safe, normal life. There is no hour. You just saved me from whatever that was. I'm grateful. But I'm not staying with you. Just drop me at a police station, or the Volkovs own half the cops in Seattle. You walk into a station, you're dead by morning. You're exaggerating. I'm really not. He glanced at her, and something in his expression made her believe him. I understand this is overwhelming. You just had your entire life pulled out from under you in the space of about 5 minutes. But right now, I'm the only thing keeping you alive. So either you trust me or you take your chances on your own. But if you choose option 2, I'm dropping you off right here on the side of the highway because I'm not going to watch you walk into a death trap." Lena stared at him, at his brutal honesty, at the matter-of-fact way he laid out her options. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist that there had to be another way. But years in the ER had taught her to recognize when a situation was critical, when there was no time for second-guessing or wishful thinking. "Fine," she said. "I'll come with you. For now. But I want answers. Real ones. Starting with who the hell you really are and why you're helping me." A ghost of a smile crossed Victor's face. "Fair enough. We've got an hour's drive. Plenty of time for story hour." He was quiet for a moment, eyes on the dark road ahead. Then he began. "I was born in Mexico City. My father was a cop who thought he could stay clean in a dirty system. He was wrong. When I was 15, the cartel killed him for refusing to look the other way on a shipment. They killed my mother too, just because she was there. I was at school. Came home to find them both dead on our kitchen floor." Lena's breath caught. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, the gesture somehow conveying both acceptance and old pain. "I joined a gang 2 days later. Figured if the world was that brutal, I might as well learn to be brutal back. Spent the next 10 years moving up through the ranks, got good at violence, better at strategy. Eventually caught the attention of some people who needed someone capable of working across borders. That's when I came to the States." "And now you work for the Russian mob?" "I work for whoever pays me. The Volkovs are one client among several. I'm what you might call a freelance problem solver. Someone has an issue that needs to be handled quietly and efficiently, they call me. Usually, that means tracking down people who owe money or information. Sometimes it means more permanent solutions." "You kill people?" It wasn't a question. "Yes." The simple honesty of it was somehow worse than any deflection would have been. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. "And you expect me to just be okay with that?" "I expect you to be realistic about the situation you're in. You don't have to like me, Lena. You don't have to approve of my choices. But right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a very ugly death. So maybe save the moral judgments for later." She wanted to hate him, wanted to demand he turn the car around and let her out. But he was right. She was in over her head in a world she didn't understand, with rules she'd never learned. And Victor, whatever else he was, had chosen to save her when he could have just as easily handed her over. "Tell me about Ethan," she said instead. "What happened to him?" Victor's jaw tightened. "They found him trying to board a plane to Mexico City with a fake passport. Dumb move. The Volkovs have people everywhere. They brought him in, asked him one more time where the rest of the money was. He didn't have it, so they made an example. How did he die?" "You don't want those details." "Tell me anyway." He looked at her again, something almost like respect in his eyes. "They shot him, twice in the chest, once in the head. Professional. Quick. He didn't suffer long, if that helps." It didn't. But at least she knew. Ethan was dead. The man she'd spent 4 years with, the man she'd imagined a future with despite all his flaws, gone, murdered, and he'd tried to sell her out to save himself. The grief she expected didn't come. Instead, there was just a hollow numbness and a bitter anger at how thoroughly she'd misjudged him. "You said he told them I was connected, that my family had money. He was desperate, would have said anything to buy himself time. I did some digging after I got the assignment. Your parents run a small accounting firm in San Diego. Comfortable, but not wealthy. No connections to anyone worth leveraging. Ethan knew that. He lied because he had nothing else left. And now they think I'm worth kidnapping. They did. Until I told them you weren't." She turned to him sharply. "What?" "I sent word that you were a dead end. Not worth the resources. The Volkovs will be pissed they wasted time on you, but they'll cut their losses and move on." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Hope flickered in her chest for the first time since this nightmare began. "So I'm safe? I can go back to my life?" Victor's expression told her the answer before he spoke. "It's not that simple. I vouched for you. Put my reputation on the line telling them you weren't worth the trouble. If they find out I lied, or if they decide to double-check my assessment, both of us are dead." The hope guttered out. "So what does that mean?" "It means you disappear for a while. Let the heat die down. I have a place where you can stay. It's secure, off the grid. You lay low for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then we reassess." "I can't just disappear. I have a job, responsibilities." You have a target on your back. The job doesn't matter if you're dead. People will notice I'm gone. My boss, my coworkers, I'll handle it. You came down with something, the flu. You need time to recover. By the time anyone thinks to ask questions, this will be resolved. Lena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was crashing over her in waves now that the adrenaline was wearing off. She'd been awake for nearly 24 hours. She'd lost her savings, her boyfriend, her apartment, and very nearly her life. Her brain felt like it was running on fumes. I don't have any clothes, she said stupidly. My wallet, my ID, everything's back at the apartment. I'll get you what you need. Just like that. Just like that. The confidence in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it just reminded her how completely out of her depth she was. This man moved through a world of violence and crime with the same ease she navigated the ER. He was offering her protection, but at what cost? Why are you doing this? She asked. You said I reminded you of someone. Who? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Her name was Sophia, my sister. Younger by 3 years. After our parents died, I tried to keep her safe, kept her away from the gang, made sure she stayed in school. She was smart, going to be a lawyer, get us both out of that life. Past tense. Lena's heart sank. One of my rivals decided the best way to hurt me was through her. They took her, sent me pictures, demands. I did everything they asked. Gave them money, information, territory. Didn't matter. They killed her anyway. Dumped her body in an alley like trash. I'm sorry, Lena whispered. I hunted down every single person involved. Took me 2 years. They all died badly. He said it without emotion, just stating facts. But it didn't bring her back. And I realized I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. I couldn't protect the one person I was supposed to protect. So this is penance? Saving me because you couldn't save her? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of watching innocent people get caught in the crossfire of other people's mistakes. Either way, you're stuck with me for now. They drove in silence after that. Lena watched the city lights give way to darkness, suburbs thinning into rural highway. She should have been terrified, should have been planning an escape. Instead, she felt oddly calm. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the bone-deep exhaustion. Or maybe it was the strange certainty that, despite everything, Victor Reyes meant what he said. He would keep her safe, even if it killed him. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it just made her aware of how dangerous the world had become in the space of a few hours. They turned off the highway onto a narrow road that wound through dense forest. No streetlights, no other cars. Just darkness and the twin beams of the headlights cutting through it. Where are we? Lena asked. About 20 miles from the nearest town. This place isn't on any maps. Bought it under a shell company 5 years ago. Nobody knows about it except me. Sounds cozy. Was that actually a smile? It's functional, has running water and electricity, the basics. The road ended at a gate. Victor entered a code on a keypad, and it swung open. They drove another quarter-mile through the trees before a house emerged from the darkness. It was smaller than Lena expected. A single-story cabin-style structure with large windows and a wraparound porch. Rustic but well-maintained. Victor parked and killed the engine. The sudden silence was profound. Home sweet home, he said. Come on, you must be exhausted. He wasn't wrong. Lena's legs felt like lead as she climbed out of the SUV. The night air was crisp and smelled of pine and earth. So different from the city, so quiet. Victor unlocked the front door and gestured her inside. The interior was sparse but clean. Hardwood floors, minimal furniture, no personal touches. A safe house, not a home. Guest room's down the hall, second door on the right, Victor said. Bathroom's next to it. I'll find you some clothes. Lena nodded, too tired to do much else. She walked down the hall, found the guest room. It was small but comfortable, with a queen bed and a simple dresser. The window looked out into darkness. She sat on the edge of the bed, and suddenly the enormity of everything that had happened crashed over her. Ethan was dead. She'd been sold to criminals. She'd run away with a man who killed people for a living. Her entire life had been upended in a matter of hours. A knock at the door. Victor stood in the doorway, holding a stack of clothes. These might be big on you, but they're clean. There's a toothbrush and other supplies in the bathroom. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. He nodded, started to leave, then paused. Lena, I know this is a lot, and I know you don't have any reason to trust me, but I meant what I said. I'll keep you safe, whatever it takes. She believed him. That was the strangest part. This violent, dangerous man who'd walked into her life through a wrong number text. She believed him completely. Okay, she said. After he left, Lena changed into the borrowed clothes, sweatpants, and a t-shirt that indeed swam on her smaller frame, and collapsed onto the bed. She should call someone, should figure out a plan, should do something other than lie here in a stranger's house in the middle of nowhere. But her body had other ideas. Within minutes, she was asleep. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a blissful moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Ethan, the money, the men at her door, Victor pulling her onto that fire escape like something out of a movie she never wanted to star in. She sat up, her body protesting. The ER shifts had trained her to function on little sleep, but yesterday had wrung her out in ways that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Her mouth tasted like something had died in it, and her hair was a disaster, but at least she was alive. That had to count for something. The clock on the nightstand read 11:47 a.m. She'd slept for 8 hours straight, dreamless and heavy. Small mercies. She found Victor in the kitchen, standing at the counter with a mug of coffee and a laptop. He'd changed clothes, dark jeans and a black Henley that did nothing to hide the lean muscle underneath. In daylight, he looked both more and less dangerous. The tattoos on his hands and neck were clearly visible now, intricate patterns that looked like they told stories she probably didn't want to hear. But there was something almost domestic about the scene. Just a man having coffee in his kitchen on a Saturday morning. Except this man killed people for a living. "You're up," he said without looking away from the screen. "Coffee's fresh. Mugs are in the cabinet above the pot." Lena poured herself a cup, added sugar from a container that looked like it had never been used, and sat at the small table. The coffee was strong and bitter and exactly what she needed. "Sleep okay?" Victor asked. "Better than I should have, considering." She wrapped her hands around the mug. "What are you doing?" "Checking in on the situation, making sure the Volkovs bought my report." He clicked through a few screens, his expression unreadable. "So far, so good. They've moved on to other business. Your name hasn't come up again." "Just like that? I'm off the hook?" "For now. These things have a way of resurfacing if you're not careful, but as long as you stay invisible for a while, we should be fine. We." He kept saying we, like they were a team now. Like her life hadn't just been turned inside out by circumstances completely beyond her control. "I need to make some calls," Lena said. "My supervisor, my landlord. I can't just vanish without a word." "Already handled." She set her mug down too hard. Coffee slopped over the rim. "Excuse me? I called the hospital this morning. Told them you came down with a severe case of the flu, possibly pneumonia. You'll be out for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. They weren't happy, but they understood." "You called my job? Pretending to be who exactly?" "Your brother. Very concerned about his sick sister who can barely get out of bed." "I don't have a brother." "They don't know that. I looked up your employee file. No emergency contacts listed except your parents, who are on the other side of the country. I gave them a callback number that goes to a burner phone. If they call, I'll handle it." Lena stood up, anger cutting through her exhaustion. "You had no right to do that. Those are my colleagues, my career. Your career doesn't matter if you're dead." Victor finally looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "I understand you're angry. You want control over something, anything, because the last 24 hours have been nothing but things happening to you. But right now, the only thing keeping you alive is staying off the grid. That means no contact with your old life. Not until we're sure it's safe." "And when will that be? A week? A month? A year?" "I don't know yet." The honesty of it made her want to throw something. Instead, she sat back down and pressed her palms against her eyes. This was insane. All of it. She should be at work right now, dealing with the usual Saturday chaos in the ER. Instead, she was hiding in a cabin in the woods with a hitman who'd appointed himself her guardian. "I hate this," she said quietly. "I know. Ethan's really dead." "Yes." "And if you hadn't intervened, I would be too." "Probably." She dropped her hands and looked at him. Really looked at him, the scars on his knuckles, the way he held himself like he was always ready for violence. the laptop positioned so he could see both the screen and the door. This was a man who lived with danger as his baseline, who'd carved out a life in the spaces between legal and lethal. "Why?" she asked. "Why risk yourself for a stranger?" Victor closed the laptop and leaned against the counter. "I told you last night. You reminded me of Sophia. I know. But that's not the whole answer, is it? You could have warned me anonymously, could have called the cops from a payphone and let them deal with it. Instead, you showed up in person and pulled me out of my apartment seconds before armed men broke down my door. That's not just about assuaging guilt over your sister." He studied her for a long moment. "You're observant. I'm an ER nurse. Reading people is part of the job description. Fair enough?" He poured himself more coffee, took a long drink. "The truth? I'm tired. I've been doing this for 15 years. The violence, the lies, the constant looking over my shoulder. It wears you down after a while. Makes you wonder if there's any point to any of it. So this is your good deed? Your redemption arc? I don't believe in redemption. I've done too much for that. But maybe I believe in small acts that push back against the ugliness. You were drowning through no fault of your own, dragged under by someone else's choices. I had the ability to pull you out, so I did." Lena wanted to argue, to poke holes in his reasoning, but she found she couldn't. There was something almost unbearably sad about the way he said it, like a man who'd stopped hoping for salvation but couldn't quite stop himself from reaching for it anyway. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you stay here while I figure out our next move. The Volkovs think you're not worth the trouble, but that only holds if you don't do anything to make them reconsider. No social media, no phone calls to friends, no paper trail that leads back to you." "I'm a prisoner then." "You're protected. There's a difference." "Not from where I'm sitting." Victor's jaw tightened. "You want to leave? Door's right there. I'll drive you back to Seattle myself. Drop you at your apartment, wish you well, but you'll be dead within 48 hours and I'll have wasted my time saving you. Your choice." The anger in his voice surprised her. Not hot anger, but cold, controlled. The anger of someone who'd offered help and had it thrown back in his face. "I'm sorry," Lena said. "You're right. I'm being ungrateful. You saved my life. I don't know how to process any of this." His expression softened slightly. "You don't have to process it all at once, 1 hour at a time. That's how you survive things that feel impossible." Something in her chest loosened. "Sounds like you're speaking from experience. More than I'd like." He set his mug down. "I need to go into town, pick up some supplies. There's food in the fridge and the TV works if you want a distraction. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't go outside. I'll be back in a few hours." "You're leaving me here alone?" "You're safer here than anywhere else right now. The property's secure. Motion sensors on the perimeter, cameras covering all the approaches. If anyone gets within 100 yards, I'll know about it." He pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, and held it out to her. "Here. This is a burner. Only has one number programmed in. Mine. You need anything, you call. I'll answer." Lena took the phone. It was a basic flip model, the kind people stopped using a decade ago. "Very retro. Very untraceable. Keep it on you." After he left, the silence in the cabin felt oppressive. Lena wandered from room to room, cataloging details. The living room had a couch that looked expensive but uncomfortable, and a bookshelf stocked with an eclectic mix: thrillers, philosophy, some books in Spanish. The kitchen was immaculate, barely lived in. The main bedroom was locked. She ended up back in the guest room, staring out the window at the forest. Trees stretched in every direction, dense and endless, beautiful in a way that felt almost hostile. She'd grown up in Southern California, all palm trees and sunshine and sprawl. This was different. This was isolation made manifest. Her phone, her real phone, was back at the apartment, along with her wallet, her ID, her entire life. Victor had promised to get her new clothes, new documents, everything she needed. But the thought of depending on him for basics made her feel like a child, helpless, vulnerable. She hated it. The burner phone rang, making her jump. She flipped it open. "Hello?" "Just checking in," Victor's voice came through, slightly distorted by the cheap speaker. "You okay?" "Fine. Bored, climbing the walls a little, but fine." "There's books, movies. The internet works if you need it, but don't log into any personal accounts. I know, you already told me. Just making sure. A pause. I'll pick up lunch. Any preferences? The mundane question made her want to laugh. Here she was, hiding from the Russian mob, and he was asking about sandwich preferences. Anything's fine. Surprise me. I'll be back by 2. He hung up before she could respond. Lena spent the next hour exploring the property from the inside, testing the boundaries of her new prison. The windows were reinforced, she realized. Not obvious about it, but there. The doors were solid core, the locks commercial grade. This wasn't just a cabin, it was a fortress disguised as a retreat. She found herself in front of the locked bedroom door again. Curiosity warred with respect for privacy. This was Victor's space, his sanctuary. She had no right to... The door wasn't actually locked. The knob turned easily under her hand. Inside, the room was as sparse as the rest of the house. A king bed with military corners on the sheets, a dresser, a closet. But the walls told a different story. They were covered in photographs, newspaper clippings, maps marked with pins and string like something from a crime drama. Lena stepped closer, her heart starting to pound. The photographs showed people. Some were candid shots, others surveillance-style captures, red X's marked through several faces. Dead, she realized. These were people Victor had killed. The newspaper clippings covered various crimes, murders, disappearances, drug busts. Each one had notations in the margins and handwriting she recognized from the note Ethan had left. No, not Ethan's writing. Similar but neater, more controlled. One wall was dedicated to a single case. A young woman's photo dominated the center. Dark hair, bright smile, eyes full of life. Sophia, Victor's sister. Around her photo were crime scene images that made Lena's stomach turn. She'd seen plenty of trauma in the ER, but there was something particularly brutal about these. This hadn't been a quick death. This had been torture. I told you not to go into places you weren't invited. Lena spun around. Victor stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. She hadn't heard him come back. The door was unlocked, she said, hating how defensive she sounded. The door was closed. That should have been enough. He stepped into the room, and suddenly the space felt much smaller. You don't get to come into my private spaces, Lena. I've given you shelter and protection. The least you can do is respect basic boundaries. I'm sorry, I needed to know who I was dealing with. And now you do. He gestured at the walls. This is what I am. These are the people I've killed, the cases I've worked, the life I've lived. Most of them deserved it. Some probably didn't. I stopped keeping count of which was which years ago. She should have been terrified. Should have been running for the door. Instead, she found herself looking back at Sophia's photo. How old was she? 22, 3 weeks from graduating law school. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. He moved to the wall, touched the edge of Sophia's photo with surprising gentleness. I killed 17 people for what happened to her. Worked my way up the chain from the street dealers who grabbed her to the boss who gave the order. Saved him for last. Took me 3 days to finish him. The casual way he said it made Lena's blood run cold. That doesn't scare you? What you've become. Every single day. But being scared doesn't change what I am. He turned back to her. You want to leave now? I'll take you. No judgment. I understand if this is too much. It was too much. It was way too much. She was standing in a room covered in evidence of murder, talking to a man who'd just admitted to torture, and somehow she still didn't feel like she was in immediate danger. Maybe there was something wrong with her. Maybe the last 24 hours had broken something fundamental in her sense of self-preservation. No, she heard herself say. I'll stay. Victor studied her face. Why? Because you're right. I'd be dead without you. And because... She paused, trying to find words for the feeling. Because you could have handed me over to the Volkovs, could have collected whatever payment they were offering for me. But you didn't. You chose to help me instead. That has to mean something. Or it means I'm a sentimental fool who's going to get us both killed. Maybe, but I'll take my chances with a sentimental fool over the Russian mob any day. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. You're tougher than you look. I work in a trauma ward. You learn to compartmentalize or you don't survive. Good. You're going to need that skill. He moved past her to the wall, started taking down the photos and clippings with methodical efficiency. I shouldn't have left this up. Got sloppy. Too comfortable thinking nobody would see it. What are you doing? Cleaning house. You're here now. That changes things. He gathered the materials into a box, sealed it, and slid it under the bed. When he straightened, the walls were bare except for the mounting tape residue. Better. Less like a serial killer's trophy room. I wasn't going to say that. You were thinking it. Maybe a little, she admitted. He almost smiled. Almost. Come on. I brought food, and we need to talk about next steps. Over sandwiches from a deli in whatever town Victor had visited, they discussed the future. Or more accurately, Victor outlined a plan while Lena tried to poke holes in it. You'll stay here for 2 weeks minimum, he said, spreading mustard on his turkey club with the same precision he probably applied to everything else. Long enough for the Volkovs to fully move on. I'll monitor the situation, make sure there's no unexpected interest in you. And then what, I just go back to my life like nothing happened? No, you can't go back to Seattle, too risky. The Volkovs have long memories, and if they see you around, it might trigger questions about why you're still alive and active when I told them you were a dead end. Lena set down her sandwich. So I have to leave my job, my apartment, everything. You have to start over somewhere new. New city, new identity if necessary. I can help with that. I know people who specialize in making people disappear. Witness protection for criminals? Something like that. You'd be surprised how many people need to vanish these days. She wanted to argue, to insist there had to be another way. But the ER nurse in her new triage knew when to accept that saving the patient meant accepting losses. Her apartment was already compromised. Her job was covered for now, but 2 weeks would stretch into longer, and eventually questions would be asked. Her old life was already gone. The only question was whether she'd accept that fact or keep fighting against it. Where would I go? She asked quietly. Anywhere you want. I'd suggest somewhere far from the West Coast. The Volkov's influence is strongest here, thins out as you go east. Denver, maybe. Or Texas. Somewhere you can blend in and start fresh. I've never lived anywhere but California and Seattle. Then it'll be an adventure. The flippancy in his tone sparked anger. Easy for you to say. You're not the one losing everything. You're right. I'm not. He met her eyes steadily. But I am the one offering you a second chance at a life that doesn't end with a bullet in your head. So maybe be a little less concerned with what you're losing and a little more grateful for what you're keeping. The words stung because they were true. She was alive. She had options, even if they weren't the ones she wanted. Ethan was dead. She could have been too. Instead, she was sitting in a safe house eating a sandwich and planning a future that wouldn't involve looking over her shoulder for the rest of her life. I'm sorry, she said. Again, I keep snapping at you when you're trying to help. You're processing. Anger's part of that. He took a bite of his sandwich, chewed thoughtfully. For what it's worth, I know this is hard. I know it's not fair. But life rarely is. The question isn't whether this is fair. It's whether you're strong enough to survive it. And if I'm not, then you wouldn't have made it this far. He gestured at her with the sandwich. You sent that breakup text. You chose to come with me instead of waiting for the Volkovs. You didn't fall apart when I told you what was really happening. You're stronger than you think, Lena. You just haven't had to prove it to yourself yet. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to feel like she had agency in any of this. But mostly she felt tired and overwhelmed and desperately out of her depth. They ate in silence for a while. Outside, the afternoon sun slanted through the trees, painting everything in shades of gold and shadow. It was beautiful in a way that felt unreal, like a movie-set version of peace. Tell me about your life, Victor said suddenly. Before all this, what was it like? The question surprised her. Why do you want to know? Because if we're going to be living in close quarters for the next few weeks, we should probably know something about each other beyond the surface-level trauma. Fair point. Lena wiped her hands on a napkin, considering where to start. I grew up in San Diego. Normal suburban childhood, mostly. My parents are accountants, like you said, very practical people. They weren't thrilled when I went into nursing instead of business or law. Why nursing? I wanted to help people. I know that sounds naive, but I genuinely thought I could make a difference. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm the one who keeps someone alive long enough to see their family again. Those moments make all the rest of it worthwhile. The rest of it being the bureaucracy, the insurance nightmares, the patients who die despite everything we do, the staff shortages that mean we're always running on fumes and prayer. She paused. The relationships that fall apart because I'm never home, and when I am, I'm too exhausted to be present. Is that what happened with Ethan? Partly. Mostly, it was that he was always looking for the quick score, the easy money. He never wanted to put in the work for anything real. I think I knew that pretty early on, but I convinced myself he'd change, that love would be enough to make him want to be better. Love's never enough, Victor said quietly. It's a starting point, not a solution. Speaking from experience? More than I'd like. He stood, started clearing the plates. I was engaged once, long time ago, before I came to the States. Maria. She was a teacher, smart, funny, put up with my bullshit longer than she should have. She wanted me to leave the life, go straight. I kept telling her I would, just one more job, one more score. Then one more turned into another, and another, until she finally had enough and left. Do you regret it? Every day. But regret doesn't change the past. It just teaches you what not to do in the future. He rinsed the dishes with methodical care. She's married now, has 3 kids, lives in Guadalajara in a nice house with a nice husband who works nice office job. Exactly the life she wanted. You keep track of her? I make sure she's safe, that's all. I owe her that much. Lena heard what he wasn't saying. He still loved her. Maybe had never stopped, but he'd loved his life more, or at least couldn't figure out how to leave it, and now she was happy with someone else while he lived in safe houses and killed people for money. The tragedy of it sat heavy in the room. I should check the perimeter, Victor said, breaking the silence. Make sure the sensors are all functioning. You'll be okay here for a bit. I'll manage. After he left, Lena found herself wandering back to the guest room. She lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to imagine a future that didn't include her apartment, her job, her carefully constructed life. What would she even do in Denver or Texas or wherever she ended up? Start over from scratch with a new identity? The thought was both terrifying and oddly liberating. Maybe this was a chance to become someone new. Someone who didn't settle for men who stole from her. Someone who didn't work herself to exhaustion, trying to prove she was good enough. Someone who actually fought for what she wanted instead of just accepting what life handed her. The burner phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Stay inside. Sensor triggered on the north perimeter. Probably an animal, but checking to be sure. Lena's heart rate kicked up. She moved to the window, peering out into the forest. Nothing moved that she could see. Just trees and shadows and the fading afternoon light. Minutes crawled by. She paced the small room, phone clutched in her hand. This was probably nothing. Victor had said animals triggered the sensors all the time. But what if it wasn't? What if the Volkovs had found them? Another text. False alarm. Dear, we're good. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. This was her life now, jumping at every sound, assuming the worst. How long before that became normal? How long before she forgot what it felt like to feel safe? When Victor came back inside, he found her still standing at the window. You okay? He asked. Just processing, like you said. She turned to face him. How do you live like this? Always waiting for the next threat? You get used to it, and you make choices that minimize the risk. That's why this place exists. That's why I keep multiple identities and never stay in one spot too long. You build your life around survival, and eventually it becomes second nature. Sounds exhausting. It is. But it's also the only way I know how to be anymore. He leaned against the doorframe. You don't have to live like this forever, Lena. We get you set up somewhere safe. You can build a normal life again. This is temporary. Is it? You just told me the Volkovs have long memories. How do I know they won't come looking for me in 5 years? 10 years? How do I ever really feel safe again? Victor was quiet for a long moment. You don't. Not completely. But you learn to live with the uncertainty. And you take precautions. You stay smart, stay aware, and you don't take stupid risks. Most people who end up dead in this world do it because they got careless. As long as you stay sharp, you'll be fine. It wasn't the reassurance she wanted, but it was probably the only honest answer he could give. That night, Lena lay in the unfamiliar bed and listened to the sounds of the forest outside. Branches creaking in the wind, something small scurrying through underbrush, the distant call of an owl. She thought she wanted silence after the constant noise of the city, but this was different. This was isolation. This was the sound of being completely, utterly alone except for a man who killed people for a living. She thought about Ethan, about the years they'd spent together, the future she'd imagined, all of it built on lies and bad choices that had finally caught up to him. She should feel sadder about his death, should grieve for the man she'd loved, even if that love had been based on illusion, but mostly she just felt angry. Angry that he'd stolen from her, angry that he'd sold her out to save himself, angry that he'd been too much of a coward to face her with the truth. He'd gotten what he'd deserved. The thought should have bothered her more than it did. Somewhere in the main part of the cabin, she heard Victor moving around, checking locks probably, reviewing security footage, whatever it was dangerous men did before bed to make sure they'd wake up in the morning. She wondered what he thought about on nights like this, whether he mourned the life he could have had with Maria, whether he regretted the choices that had led him here, whether he ever got tired of the constant vigilance. The questions followed her down into uneasy sleep, where she dreamed of running through endless forests while shadows with Russian accents called her name. The days bled together in a way Lena hadn't experienced since nursing school. Wake up, coffee, avoid Victor's too observant stare, find ways to fill the hours that didn't involve climbing the walls or thinking too hard about everything she'd lost. Repeat. By day 5, she'd read 4 novels from Victor's surprisingly literary collection and watched enough cable news to feel her brain starting to atrophy. The cabin, which had seemed cozy at first, now felt like a very comfortable cage. Victor came and went on errands he never fully explained. Sometimes he'd be gone for hours. Other times he'd disappear into his room with his laptop and emerge looking grimmer than when he went in. Lena learned not to ask. The less she knew about his work, the better she slept. On day 6, she woke to find him in the kitchen at dawn, dressed all in black, checking a handgun with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it 10,000 times before. Going somewhere? She asked, keeping her voice light, even as her stomach nodded. Meeting. Shouldn't take long. He slid the gun into a holster at his hip, covered it with a jacket. You'll be fine here. Same rules as always. Victor. She stopped him as he headed for the door. Is this about me? About the Volkovs? He paused, and she saw him weighing how much truth to give her. Partly. There's been some chatter. Nothing concrete, but enough that I want to check in with a contact, make sure we're still in the clear. What kind of chatter? The kind that suggests someone's asking questions about Ethan's girlfriend. Could be routine cleanup, could be something else. I won't know until I talk to my guy. Fear spiked through her. Should I be worried? Not yet, but stay alert. If anything feels wrong, you use that burner and call me immediately. Don't wait. Don't second-guess yourself. Just call. After he left, the silence felt different, heavier. Lena found herself checking the windows more often, jumping at sounds that had become familiar over the past week. A branch scraping the roof, the creak of old wood settling, her own heartbeat too loud in her ears. She tried to distract herself with breakfast, but the eggs tasted like paste, and the coffee sat wrong in her stomach. Finally, she gave up and went to the living room, pulled up the news on the TV. Maybe losing herself in other people's problems would help. The third story made her freeze. Seattle police are still searching for leads in the murder of Ethan Graves, a 31-year-old tech sales representative found shot to death in an alley near Pike Place Market 6 days ago. Graves' girlfriend, Lena Carter, has not been seen since the night of the murder and is wanted for questioning. Anyone with information is urged to contact. Her face filled the screen. Her work ID photo, the one where she looked tired and slightly annoyed at having to stop in the middle of a shift for the hospital photographer. They thought she'd killed him. The police thought she'd murdered Ethan. Lena's hands shook as she grabbed the burner phone and dialed Victor's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. She hung up, tried again. Same result. She forced herself to breathe. He was in a meeting. He told her that. He'd call back when he could. This wasn't an emergency. Not yet. Except they were looking for her. Her name was on the news. Her face. If anyone recognized her, if anyone made the connection. The burner rang. She answered before the first ring finished. Did you see the news? I'm watching it now. Victor's voice was tight. Stay calm. This is manageable. Manageable. They think I killed him. I'm wanted for questioning, which is cop speak for I know what it means. And I'm telling you, this is not as bad as it looks. The cops don't have evidence linking you to the murder because there isn't any. You were at work when Ethan died. Your colleagues can confirm that. Can they? You told them I was sick, that I left early. A pause. I told them you left after your shift ended, which was 8 p.m. Ethan died around 11. The timeline doesn't work. Then why do they want to question me? Because you're the girlfriend and you disappeared right after he died. That looks suspicious, but suspicious isn't the same as guilty. Once they actually talk to you and confirm your alibi, they'll move on to other leads. Lena sank onto the couch, trying to process. So what do I do? Turn myself in? Talk to them? Absolutely not. The second you walk into a police station, the Volkovs will know about it. They have people inside, cops on the payroll. You surface now, you're dead before the interrogation even starts. So I just stay hidden and let them think I'm a murderer? You stay hidden and stay alive. Everything else is secondary. His voice softened slightly. I know this is hard. I know it's not fair, but we stick to the plan. 2 weeks of laying low, then we move you somewhere safe and work on clearing your name from a distance. How? How do we do that when I can't even show my face? I have lawyers, good ones who know how to navigate situations like this. They can broker a deal with the prosecutors, arrange for you to give a statement remotely, prove you weren't involved. It'll take time, but it's doable. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he had this handled the way he seemed to have everything else handled, but doubt gnawed at her. What if the Volkovs decide to tell the police what really happened, she asked. They could pin Ethan's murder on me to cover their tracks. They won't. Drawing police attention to their operation is the last thing they want. As far as they're concerned, this is wrapped up. Ethan's dead, you're not worth the trouble, and life moves on. The cops are just doing what cops do, following the most obvious lead. When it goes nowhere, they'll find someone else to blame. And if you're wrong, then we adjust. But I'm not wrong, Lena. Trust me. The call ended, and she sat there, staring at her face on the TV screen. The news had moved on to weather, but her image was burned into her brain. She looked so normal in that photo, so unremarkable. Just another healthcare worker grinding through another shift. That woman felt like a stranger now. She spent the rest of the morning on edge, checking her phone every few minutes for updates from Victor. None came. The silence stretched and stretched until she thought she might scream from the tension. Around noon, tires crunched on gravel outside. Lena's heart stopped. Victor had taken the SUV. This was a different vehicle. She moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight. A white sedan sat in the driveway, engine still running. The driver's door opened and a man got out. Tall, lean, wearing jeans and a jacket. Not in a uniform, but something about the way he moved screamed law enforcement. He walked to the front door and knocked. 3 sharp raps that echoed through the cabin. Lena backed away from the window, phone clutched in her hand. Should she call Victor? Hide? The man knocked again, harder this time. Lena Carter, this is Detective Barnes with Seattle PD. I just want to talk. I know you're scared, but I can help you. Her mind raced. How had he found her? Victor had said this place was secure, off the grid. Unless Victor had been wrong. Unless someone had talked. Unless... Your boyfriend's dead, Lena. I know you didn't kill him. I know you're probably terrified right now, but running just makes you look guilty. Let me help you. The voice was calm, reasonable. Everything a good cop should sound like when trying to coax out a scared witness. But Victor's warning echoed in her head. The Volkovs have people inside. Cops on the payroll. She dialed Victor's number with shaking hands. It rang and rang. No answer. I'm alone, Lena. No backup, no cameras. This is just you and me having a conversation? 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Every instinct screamed at her to answer the door, to trust the system, to believe that the police were there to protect her. That was what she'd been raised to believe. Cops were the good guys. They helped people. But she'd also learned in the ER that sometimes the people who were supposed to help you were the ones who hurt you most. Abusers wearing wedding rings. Parents who brought in kids with injuries that didn't match their stories. The world wasn't as simple as good guys and bad guys. I can wait out here all day if I need to, Detective Barnes called. But it's getting cold, and I think we'd both rather do this inside where it's warm. Lena forced herself to think. If he was alone, if he really just wanted to talk, then opening the door posed minimal risk. But if he was working for the Volkovs, if this was a trap, then the second she showed herself, she was dead. The detective tried the door handle. Locked. Thank whatever higher power might be listening. Lena, I know Victor Reyes is involved in this. I know he took you from your apartment. Has he hurt you? Threatened you? Because if he has, I can protect you. We can get you somewhere safe. Victor's name from this stranger's mouth sent ice through her veins. He knew. Somehow, he knew about Victor, which meant this wasn't random. This wasn't a lucky guess. Someone had told him exactly where to look. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Do not answer the door. I'm 10 minutes out. Keep him talking if you can. Relief and terror warred in her chest. Victor was coming. She just had to stall. She moved closer to the door, staying to the side. How did you find me? So you are in there. Good. That's good, Lena. And I found you because I'm a detective. It's what I do. A pause. Look, I know Reyes has you convinced he's protecting you, but he's not. He's a killer. He works for the Volkov family, the same people who murdered your boyfriend. If you know all that, then you know I'm safer in here than out there with you. That's not true. The Volkovs don't want you anymore. We already talked to them. They confirmed you're not involved, that Ethan acted alone. You're in the clear with them. But Reyes, he's using you for something, and whatever it is, it's not going to end well for you. Lena's mind worked through the implications. The Volkovs had talked to the police? That made no sense, unless they were covering their own involvement, creating a narrative that kept them out of the spotlight. What did they tell you? She asked, playing for time. That Ethan owed them money, that he tried to skip town and they handled it. They were very cooperative, actually. Gave us everything we needed to close the case, all except you. They said you weren't part of it, that you were just collateral damage. But then you disappeared with a known associate of theirs, and now I have questions. Maybe I disappeared because men broke into my apartment and I was scared. Is that what happened? Because the landlord said there was no sign of forced entry when he checked your place the next morning. No broken door, no shattered windows, just you, gone. Victor had fixed it. Of course he had. He'd gone back and cleaned up the evidence, made it look like nothing had happened, which from a criminal perspective was smart, but from a police perspective made her look even guiltier. I'm tired of talking through a door, Lena said. If you want to have a conversation, show me some ID. Slide it under the door. A moment of silence. Then a leather wallet appeared under the door. She picked it up, examined the badge and ID card. Detective Marcus Barnes, Seattle Police Department. The photo matched the man outside. Of course, Victor had told her fake IDs were easy to get. But this looked real, official, the kind of thing that was harder to forge. She slid it back under the door. Okay, you're a cop. That doesn't mean I trust you. Fair enough. What would make you trust me? Proof that you're not working for the Volkovs. Proof that opening this door doesn't get me killed. I can't prove a negative, Lena. You're going to have to make a choice here. Either you believe I'm here to help, or you believe Reyes, a man who kills people for money, is your best option for survival. Which one of those sounds more logical? Put that way, it did sound insane. She was trusting a hitman over a cop. But logic had left the building the moment she'd sent that text to the wrong number. Victor saved my life, she said. The Volkovs sent men to take me. He got me out before they could. That's not using me. That's protection. And what do you think he wants in return for that protection? The question landed harder than it should have. What did Victor want? He'd never asked for anything, never made demands or suggested there was a price for his help. He just helped, which in her experience was unusual enough to be suspicious. I don't know, she admitted. Then maybe you should ask yourself why a professional killer would risk his relationship with a major criminal organization to save a woman he doesn't know. People like Reyes don't do things out of the goodness of their hearts. There's always an angle. Doubt crept in, cold and insidious. What if Barnes was right? What if she'd traded one danger for another? What if Victor had his own agenda she couldn't see yet? But then she remembered the way he'd talked about Sophia, the pain in his voice when he described failing to protect his sister, the wall of evidence in his bedroom that spoke to years of obsession and guilt. That hadn't been an act. That had been real. He lost someone, Lena said quietly. Someone the system couldn't protect. Maybe he's trying to make up for that. Or maybe he's told you a very compelling story to keep you compliant. Lena, I need you to think clearly here. Has he let you contact anyone? Your family, your friends? Has he given you access to the outside world, or has he kept you isolated? The accuracy of the observation stung. Victor had controlled every aspect of her contact with the world beyond the cabin. For her protection, he'd said, to keep her safe. But isolation was also how you controlled someone, how you made them dependent.
I need time to think, she said. You don't have time. Reyes is going to come back soon, and when he does, your window for getting out of this cleanly closes. Come with me now. We'll go to the station, you'll give a statement, and we'll figure out how to keep you safe from both the Volkovs and Reyes. But you have to make the choice now.
Lena's hand hovered over the deadbolt. One twist, and the door would open. One choice, and she could step back into the world she understood, where cops were good and criminals were bad and everything made sense. Except it didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. She heard the engine before she saw it. Victor's SUV screaming up the driveway, gravel spraying. He was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped, gun drawn, moving with lethal purpose toward Detective Barnes.
Step away from the door, Victor said, his voice carrying that edge she'd heard only once before.
Now. Barnes raised his hands, but he didn't look scared. Reyes, good to see you again. Can't say the same. You need to leave. Can't do that. I'm here to help Ms. Carter. She's wanted for questioning in a murder investigation. She had nothing to do with Ethan's death, and you know it. This is harassment. This is police work. And you're obstructing it. Barnes lowered his hand slowly. I don't want trouble. I just want to talk to her. 5 minutes. Not happening. You're on private property and you weren't invited. That's trespassing. So either you leave now or I make you leave. You going to shoot a cop, Victor? That's a line even you won't cross. Try me. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Lena stood frozen on the other side of the door, caught between two men who both claimed to want to help her and both looked ready to kill for it. Lena, Barnes called. I'm walking away, but I'm leaving my card under the door. When you're ready to talk, when you're ready to get out from under Reyes' control, you call me. Day or night, I'll come get you. A business card slid under the door. Then she heard footsteps, the sedan's door closing, the engine starting. The car pulled away, gravel crunching, and then silence. Victor was inside a moment later, locking the door behind him with sharp, angry movements. Did you talk to him? Yes. What did you tell him? Nothing. I asked for ID, stalled for time. That's it. She held up the business card. He says he can help me. He's lying. Barnes is dirty. I've known about him for years. He works for the Bratva, different branch of the Russian mob, competitors of the Volkovs. If he got his hands on you, he'd use you as leverage against them. You'd be a bargaining chip, nothing more. How do I know you're telling the truth? Victor stopped mid-motion, turned to look at her. What? How do I know any of what you've told me is real? How do I know you're not the one using me? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Barnes asked me why you'd risk everything to save a stranger. And I didn't have a good answer, so give me one. Give me a reason to keep trusting you when nothing about this situation makes sense. His expression hardened. You want the truth? Fine. I'm not doing this out of pure altruism. I'm not some knight in shining armor who swoops in to save damsels in distress. I save you because not saving you would make me the same as the people who killed Sophia. It would make me complicit in the machinery that grinds up innocent people and spits them out. And I'm a lot of things, Lena, but I'm not that. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. His voice rose and she saw the crack in his control. You want me to say there's some grand strategy? Some angle I'm working? There isn't. I saw a woman about to be destroyed by circumstances beyond her control. And I chose to step in. That's it. That's the whole story. Then why did you clean up my apartment? Why make it look like nothing happened? That made me look guilty. I cleaned it up so the Volkovs wouldn't have evidence of their attempted kidnapping, so there wouldn't be a trail leading back to them that might make them reconsider leaving you alone. Every choice I've made has been about keeping you alive long enough to get clear of this mess. By isolating me, by controlling who I talk to and where I go and what I know, by protecting you from making mistakes that get you killed. He took a breath, visibly forcing himself to calm down. I'm sorry. I know this is hard. I know you want control over your own life, but right now, giving you that control means giving you rope to hang yourself with. So yes, I've been controlling the situation because I've been in this world long enough to know how it works, and you haven't. Lena sat down heavily on the couch. I don't know what to believe anymore. Victor moved closer but didn't sit. Believe this. If I wanted to hurt you, I've had a dozen opportunities. If I wanted to sell you out, I could have done it before you even knew my name. And if I wanted to use you, I'd have already made my move. The fact that I haven't should tell you something. It tells me you're patient, or you're waiting for the right moment. Or it tells you I'm exactly who I say I am. A deeply flawed man trying to do one decent thing in a life full of terrible choices. He finally sat, keeping distance between them. Barnes showing up here means someone talked. Someone knew where we were, and that's a problem. We need to move. Move where? I have another property, more remote, harder to find. We pack up and leave within the hour. What if I don't want to go? What if I want to take my chances with Barnes? Then you'll be dead by tomorrow, and I'll have wasted a week of my life for nothing. He looked at her, and she saw genuine pain in his eyes. I can't force you to trust me. I can't make you believe I'm on your side. All I can do is keep making the choices that keep you breathing and hope eventually you'll see I'm not your enemy. The speech should have sounded manipulative, should have felt like a guilt trip designed to keep her compliant. Instead, it just sounded tired, like a man who'd been fighting too long and wasn't sure he remembered what he was fighting for anymore. Lena thought about the card in her hand, about Detective Barnes and his reasonable voice and his logical arguments, about the world she'd left behind and the world she'd been thrown into, about trust and risk and the impossible mathematics of deciding who to believe when everyone had something to gain from your choices. Then she thought about Victor pulling her onto that fire escape, about the way he'd taken down the photos from his wall, because having her there made him vulnerable, about Sophia and Maria and all the ways he'd failed people he cared about and was trying not to fail again. Maybe he was playing her. Maybe this was all an elaborate con she was too naive to see through. Or maybe sometimes broken people tried to keep other people from breaking. Maybe that was as close to redemption as people like them got. She tore up Detective Barnes' card and let the pieces fall to the floor. Okay, she said. We go. But Victor, if you're lying to me, if any of this is a game, I will find a way to make you regret it. I might not be a killer, but I'm resourceful, and I'm done being a victim. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. Fair enough? Now pack. We leave in 30 minutes. The new safe house was exactly that, a house, not a cabin. 2 stories, tucked into the mountains 3 hours north of the first location, accessible only by a dirt road that looked more like a suggestion than an actual path. Victor had driven in silence most of the way, checking his mirrors every few minutes, taking random turns that added an hour to the trip. Old habit, he'd said when she asked, making sure we're not followed. Now, standing in the living room of this new prison, Lena felt the weight of the past week settle over her like a physical thing. She was tired, bone deep, soul tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep and everything to do with living in a constant state of fear. There's 3 bedrooms upstairs, Victor said, setting down the bags he'd packed from the cabin. Pick whichever one you want. I'll take the one closest to the stairs. So you're between me and anyone who comes through the door. That's the idea. She chose the room at the end of the hall, furthest from the stairs. It had a window that looked out over dense forest and a lock on the inside of the door. Not that a lock would do much good if Victor decided to break it down, but it made her feel fractionally more in control. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every sound seemed amplified. The house settling, wind in the trees, the distant call of something that might have been a coyote. She lay in the darkness and thought about Detective Barnes, about his reasonable voice and his logical arguments, about the choice she'd made to stay with Victor instead. She'd torn up that business card, but she remembered the number. That bothered her more than it should have. Around 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went downstairs. Victor was in the kitchen, laptop open, coffee mug at his elbow. He looked up when she entered but didn't seem surprised. Can't sleep? He asked. Apparently not. You? Sleep's overrated. He gestured to the coffee pot. Help yourself. She poured a cup and sat across from him. On his screen, she could see what looked like surveillance footage from multiple cameras. What are you watching? Perimeter feeds, making sure Barnes didn't follow us. Did he? Not that I can see. But he's smart, patient. He might be waiting to make his move. Lena wrapped her hands around the mug, absorbing the warmth. Tell me about him. The truth this time. Victor closed the laptop and leaned back. Marcus Barnes has been on the Bratva's payroll for about 5 years. Started small, looking the other way on shipments, losing evidence, that kind of thing. But he got greedy, started demanding bigger cuts. Now he's in deep enough that they own him completely. How do you know all this? Because I've worked with the Bratva. Different operations, different times, but our paths have crossed. Barnes was always around the edges, cleaning up messes, making problems disappear. He's good at his job, good enough that most people don't realize he's dirty. If he's that good, why would he risk coming after me? Because you're valuable, not to the Volkovs, they're done with you, but to the Bratva, you represent an opportunity. They could use you to embarrass the Volkovs, claim they were sloppy in their cleanup, make them look weak. In this world, perception is everything. Looking weak gets you killed. So I'm just a pawn in some gang war I didn't even know existed. Welcome to the game, Victor's voice was bitter. Nobody asked to get pulled into this. It just happens. You date the wrong person, work for the wrong company, live in the wrong neighborhood. Suddenly you're collateral damage in someone else's war. Is that what happened to you? You were collateral damage? He was quiet for a long moment. I chose this life. After my parents died, I could have found another way. Could have left Mexico City, started over somewhere clean, but I was angry, wanted revenge, wanted to hurt the people who'd hurt me. So I joined the gang, and I was good at it. Too good. By the time I realized what I'd become, it was too late to go back. It's never too late. That's what Maria used to say. It's never too late to choose differently. But she was wrong. Some choices, once you make them, they define everything that comes after. I killed my first man when I was 17, stabbed him in an alley over territory that didn't even matter. After that, everything else was just easier. The second kill, the third. Eventually, you stop counting. You stop feeling anything about it. It's just what you do. Lena absorbed this, trying to reconcile the man across from her with the violence he described. Do you regret it? Every single day. But regret doesn't undo it. Doesn't bring back the people I've killed or fix the lives I've destroyed. It just sits there, this weight you carry around, getting heavier with every year. Then why keep doing it? Because it's all I know. And because sometimes, very rarely, I get to use these skills to do something that matters, like pulling a nurse off a fire escape before the mob takes her. He looked at her directly. That doesn't make me a good person, Lena. It just makes me slightly less terrible than I could be. The honesty was almost painful. She'd spent 4 years with Ethan, who'd lied about everything from where he worked to where their money went. Victor's brutal truthfulness was jarring by comparison. I want to learn, she said suddenly. Learn what? How to protect myself. How to not be helpless if something happens. You said yourself that you won't always be around, so teach me. Teach me how to fight back. Victor studied her for a long moment. That's not a small ask. Learning to defend yourself, really defend yourself, takes time. Training. Most people don't have the stomach for it. I spent 3 years in an ER watching people die. I have plenty of stomach. Watching isn't the same as doing. Then let me try. What's the worst that happens? I'm bad at it, and we both know I need to rely on you. That's already the situation. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Okay, tomorrow we start. But I'm warning you now, I don't go easy. If you're going to learn this, you're going to learn it right. I wouldn't expect anything less. They sat in silence after that, drinking coffee and watching the sky slowly lighten through the windows. Lena thought about the woman she'd been 2 weeks ago. That woman would have been horrified at the idea of learning violence, would have insisted there were better ways, civilized ways to solve problems. But that woman had also believed Ethan when he said he loved her, had believed the world was fundamentally fair and just, had believed a lot of things that turned out to be comfortable lies. This new version of herself, the one forming in the aftermath of everything that had happened, believed in different things, believed in being prepared, in taking control where she could, in not depending on anyone else for her survival. She wasn't sure she liked this new version, but she was starting to respect her. Training started at dawn. Victor led her to a cleared area behind the house where he'd set up what looked like a makeshift gym, punching bag, weights, mats on the ground. First rule, he said, forget everything you think you know about fighting. Most people's understanding comes from movies, and movies are designed to look good, not to work in real life. Okay,
Second rule, fighting isn't fair. There's no referee, no rules, no timeout. If you're in a situation where you need to fight, you fight to win by any means necessary. Eyes, throat, groin. You use whatever gives you an advantage. He spent the first hour just teaching her how to stand, how to keep her balance, how to protect her center of mass while staying mobile. It was boring and repetitive, and her legs burned from holding positions that felt awkward and unnatural. This is stupid, she said after the dozenth correction to her stance. We've been doing the same thing for an hour. Foundation, Victor said. Everything else builds on this. You can't throw a punch if you can't maintain your balance. You can't defend yourself if you're constantly off-center, so we drill the basics until they're automatic. By the end of the second hour, she was sweating and frustrated and ready to quit. Victor handed her a water bottle and sat on the mat. You did good, he said. I didn't do anything. I just stood there while you corrected my posture. You didn't give up. That's more than most people manage on day one. He took a drink from his own bottle. Fighting is 90% mental. The physical part, anyone can learn with enough time. But the will to actually hurt someone when the moment comes? That's rare. Most people freeze when violence gets real. Have you ever frozen?
Once. My third job. I was supposed to take out a guy who'd been skimming from a cartel shipment. Simple execution. But when I got there, his kid was home, 6 years old, playing with trucks on the living room floor. I stood there with my gun drawn, and I couldn't do it. Couldn't pull the trigger with that kid right there. What happened? I waited until the guy put his son to bed. Then I did the job. But those 20 minutes, waiting and knowing what I was about to do while that kid played, I think about that a lot. Did it change anything? Make you want to stop? For about a week. Then I needed money, and the next job came up and I took it. That's how it works. You tell yourself this is the last one, you'll get out after this, find something clean. But there's always another reason to stay. Another debt to pay, another person depending on you, another excuse.
Lena thought about her own excuses.
How many shifts had she picked up, telling herself it was just one more? Just to build the savings a little higher? Just until things settled down with Ethan? How many red flags had she ignored because addressing them would mean admitting she'd wasted 4 years on the wrong person? Everyone had their own version of one more job. Over the next 3 days, Victor worked her harder than any ER shift ever had. He taught her how to throw a punch without breaking her hand, how to use her elbows and knees in close quarters, how to exploit the mechanical weaknesses of the human body, joints that only bent one way, pressure points that made muscles go slack.
You're never going to outmuscle a man my size, he explained, demonstrating a throw that used momentum instead of strength. But you can outsmart him. Use his size against him. Make him work harder while you work smarter. On day 4, her phone rang. The burner Victor had given her. Only one number was programmed in, and he was standing right in front of her. They both froze. Don't answer it, Victor said quietly, but Lena was already flipping it open. Hello?
Lena Carter. The voice was accented, Russian, cold as winter. You are a difficult woman to reach. Her blood turned to ice. Who is this? My name is Dmitry Volkov. I believe you know my family. Victor was already moving, pulling out his own phone, fingers flying across the screen. He held up a message. Keep him talking. I don't know what you want, Lena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I had nothing to do with Ethan's business. I know. Victor Reyes told us you were not involved, and yet here we are, days later, and you are still with him, still under his protection. This makes me curious. He's helping me stay safe, that's all. Safe from whom? We already told you we have no interest in you. The police have no evidence against you. So why do you hide with a killer instead of returning to your life? Because that life was gone. Because she'd seen too much, learned too much. Because going back would mean pretending the last 2 weeks hadn't fundamentally changed who she was. I'm scared, she said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Ethan's dead. Men came to my apartment. I don't know who to trust. Ah, fear. Yes, I understand fear. It is a useful emotion. It keeps people alive. A pause. But fear also makes people do stupid things, like trusting men who have their own agendas. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Victor Reyes is not your friend. He is a professional. He does nothing without calculating the cost and benefit. So ask yourself, what is he gaining from protecting you? He told you about his sister, Sophia. Very tragic story. Very compelling, and perhaps even true. But that does not mean his motives with you are pure. Victor always has an angle. Always. Lena looked at Victor, who was listening intently while simultaneously typing on his phone. His face gave nothing away. Even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that he saved my life. Did he? Or did he create a situation where you would feel indebted to him? Think about it, Lena. The men who came to your apartment, did you see them? Or did you just hear Victor's voice telling you they were there? The question landed like a punch. She had heard footsteps, heard voices, but had she actually seen anyone? The door had been splintering as she ran to the balcony. Or had it? In the chaos and fear, had she really registered what was happening, or had she just believed what Victor told her? No. That was paranoid thinking. The kind of mind game that tore apart trust from the inside. I heard them breaking down my door, she said firmly. Perhaps. Or perhaps you heard Victor making those sounds to scare you into running. Either way, you are with him now. And that presents a problem for me. I thought you said you had no interest in me. I did not. But now Detective Barnes is asking questions. He believes you are being held against your will by Victor. He is threatening to involve federal authorities. This creates unnecessary attention on my organization, attention I do not appreciate. Victor held up his phone again. He's bluffing. Don't react. I'll talk to Barnes, Lena said. Tell him to back off. Yes, you will. In fact, you will meet with him. Tomorrow night, there's a diner on Highway 20, 30 miles south of where you are now. Victor knows the place. You will go there. You will convince the detective that you are fine and that he should stop looking for you, and then this unfortunate situation will be resolved. And if I don't, then I will assume Victor has turned you against us, and I will be forced to take steps to protect my interests, steps that will not be pleasant for either of you. The line went dead. Lena set the phone down with shaking hands. How did he know where we are? He didn't. Not exactly. But he knows the general area, which is bad enough. Victor ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Barnes must have reported back to the Bratva, who passed the information to the Volkovs as a courtesy, professional cooperation. They want me to know they're still watching. What do? We don't do anything. I handle it. He wants me to meet with Barnes. If you do, Barnes takes you, either to the Bratva or into custody, doesn't matter which. Either way, you're gone and I can't protect you. So we run again. Running just delays the inevitable. Eventually they'll track us down. Eventually we run out of safe houses. Victor sat heavily on the mat. I should have seen this coming, should have known they'd use Barnes to apply pressure. This isn't your fault. It's entirely my fault. I involved myself in a situation I should have stayed out of. I broke protocol by not delivering you to the Volkovs when I had the chance, and now we're both paying for it. Lena thought about the past week, the training, the conversations, the slow building of something that felt almost like trust. What if I meet with him? Absolutely not. Hear me out. I meet with Barnes, but we control the situation. You're there, watching. If it goes wrong, you pull me out. But if I can convince him I'm fine, that I'm with you willingly, maybe he backs off and the Volkovs lose interest again. That's a huge gamble. Everything about this situation is a gamble. At least this way we're making an active choice instead of just reacting. Victor looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You've changed. 2 weeks ago, you wouldn't have suggested walking into danger voluntarily. 2 weeks ago, I thought the world worked differently. I've learned better. She met his eyes. I'm not a victim anymore, Victor. I'm tired of running and hiding and letting other people make decisions about my life. So let me do this. Let me try to fix this. He was quiet for a long time, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but we do this my way. I scout the location beforehand, set up Overwatch, and at the first sign things are going wrong, I'm pulling you out, non-negotiable. Deal. That night, Lena lay awake again, but this time it wasn't fear keeping her up. It was anticipation. Tomorrow she'd face Barnes, And depending on how it went, either she'd buy them breathing room or she'd confirm that the Volkovs were never going to let this go. Either way, she'd be taking action instead of just surviving, and that felt like progress. She heard a knock at her door. "Come in." Victor entered, staying in the doorway. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "No, we can't." "We both know that." She sat up. "I'm not saying I'm not scared. I am. But I'm also tired of being the thing that happens to instead of the person making things happen." "Fair enough. But I need you to understand something. If this goes wrong tomorrow, if Barnes has people waiting, or if the Volkovs decide to make a move, I might not be able to save you. The odds won't be in our favor." "I know. And you're still willing to go." "I'm still willing to go." He nodded slowly. "You really have changed. The woman I pulled off that fire escape would never have agreed to this." "That woman didn't know what she was capable of. I'm starting to figure it out." Victor left, and Lena settled back into bed. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. She'd face it the way she'd learned to face everything else in the ER, with preparation, focus, and the understanding that sometimes you did everything right and still lost. But at least she'd be fighting. At least she'd have that. The diner was exactly what she'd expected. Worn booths, fluorescent lighting, coffee that tasted like it had been sitting for hours. Victor had arrived 3 hours early, checked every angle, identified exits and sightlines. He was positioned in a truck across the highway with a rifle and a radio. "I've got you covered," his voice came through the earpiece he'd given her. "Barnes just pulled up. 2 minutes." Lena's heart hammered. She sat in a booth near the back, hands wrapped around a mug of terrible coffee, trying to look calm. Barnes walked in looking exactly as he had at the cabin. Professional, concerned, the perfect image of a cop who just wanted to help. "Lena," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "I'm glad you came. I was worried Reyes wouldn't let you. I make my own decisions." "Do you?" He gestured to her ear. "Is he listening right now?" She didn't answer. Barnes sighed. "I'm not your enemy. I know Reyes has convinced you otherwise, but I'm really trying to help here. The Volkovs want this resolved. They don't like loose ends. They told me if I convinced you to back off, they'd leave me alone." "And you believe them?" "I don't have a lot of choice. You have exactly one choice. Come with me right now. I take you into protective custody, we sort out your statement about Ethan's murder, and we get you somewhere safe. Somewhere Reyes can't reach you." In her ear, Victor's voice. "He's got 2 men in a car outside. Black sedan, northwest corner of the lot." Lena kept her expression neutral. "And then what? I testify against the Volkovs? Spend the rest of my life in witness protection? If necessary, yes. But most likely they accept that you're not a threat and everyone moves on. You get your life back." "My life is gone, Detective. It was gone the moment Ethan stole my money and sold me out. I can't get it back. I can only move forward." "With Reyes? A man who kills for money? That's your plan for moving forward?" "He's kept me alive. For now. But what happens when you stop being useful to him? When whatever angle he's working plays out? You think he's going to keep protecting you out of the goodness of his heart?" The same arguments Dmitry Volkov had made. Everyone's so convinced that Victor had ulterior motives. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was being naive, seeing redemption in a man who was just playing a longer game than she understood. But she'd made her choice, and she was seeing it through. "I'm not going with you," she said. "Tell the Volkovs I'm not a threat. Tell them I just want to disappear and live quietly. Whatever you need to say to make this go away." Barnes leaned forward. "Lena, listen to me. You walk out of here with Reyes, you might not get another chance. This is it. This is your window to get out." "Third man just entered," Victor's voice said. "Behind you, 6 o'clock. This is about to go bad." Lena stood up. "I'm sorry you wasted your time, Detective." Barnes grabbed her wrist, not hard, but firm. "I can't let you leave." And there it was. The truth under all the reasonable concern. He'd never intended to let her walk away. "Let go of me," she said quietly. "Not until you listen to—" Lena did exactly what Victor had taught her. She rotated her wrist against his thumb, breaking his grip, then drove her knee into the table edge, using the leverage to slam her elbow into his face. Barnes's head snapped back, blood pouring from his nose. She ran. The third man was already moving, blocking the front exit. Lena pivoted, headed for the kitchen. Behind her, Barnes was shouting. Ahead, kitchen staff stared in confusion as she burst through the double doors. "Exit?" she gasped at a cook. He pointed to a door in the back. She hit it running, emerged into an alley, and Victor's SUV was already there, passenger door open. "Get in!" She dove into the seat and they were moving before she'd even closed the door. Behind them, men poured out of the diner. A gunshot cracked the air, and their rear window spiderwebbed. "Stay down," Victor ordered, taking a corner hard enough to throw her against the door. More shots. Victor returned fire with one hand while steering with the other, and Lena realized with a strange detachment that she was caught in an actual firefight. This was her life now. Car chases and gunfire and running from men who wanted to use her or kill her, or both. They lost the pursuers somewhere on the back roads, Victor using every evasion technique he knew. By the time they made it back to the safe house, Lena was shaking with adrenaline come down. "You did good," Victor said as they hurried inside. "That move with the table was smart. I thought I was going to die. But you didn't. You fought back and you ran and you survived. That's what matters." He locked the doors, checked the security feeds, then sat heavily on the couch. Blood soaked his left sleeve. "You're hurt," Lena said, her nurse training kicking in automatically. "Just a graze. I've had worse." "Let me see it." He didn't argue, which told her it hurt more than he was letting on. She helped him out of the jacket, cut away the sleeve. The bullet had torn a furrow along his upper arm, painful, bloody, but not life-threatening. She cleaned and dressed it with supplies from the first aid kit Victor kept stocked, her hands steady despite everything. This, at least, she knew how to do. This was familiar ground. "We can't stay here," Victor said as she worked. "Barnes knows the general area. They'll find this place eventually." "So we run again?" "No. Running just puts us in the same situation a week from now." He met her eyes. "I'm ending this." "How?" "I'm going to the Volkovs, making a deal. Me for you. I hand myself over, take responsibility for interfering in their business, and they agree to leave you alone." "That's suicide. That's the only move left that protects you." "No." She tied off the bandage harder than necessary. "You don't get to make that choice for me. We're in this together now." "Lena, I said no. You told me I was stronger than I thought, that I could handle this world, so let me prove it. We face this together or we don't face it at all." Victor looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. "You know what that means, what we'd have to do." "Tell me." "We'd have to go on offense, stop reacting and start acting, hit them before they hit us." "You mean kill them?" "I mean remove the threat permanently, all of it. The Volkovs, Barnes, anyone else who knows about you. It's the only way to guarantee your safety." Lena thought about Marco, the gunshot kid from her last shift in the ER. About all the trauma victims she'd tried to save, all the lives cut short by violence. About the person she'd been 2 weeks ago who would have been horrified at this conversation. That person was gone. The world had burned her away. "Okay," she said. "Tell me what we need to do." Victor spread a map across the kitchen table, marking locations with a red pen. His wounded arm didn't seem to slow him down, though Lena noticed him favoring it when he thought she wasn't looking. "Dmitry Volkov operates out of a warehouse in the industrial district," he said, tapping the map. "He keeps a small crew there, maybe 6 guys on any given night. Barnes will likely be there too, coordinating with them after what happened at the diner. So we're walking into a building full of armed criminals. We are creating a situation where they have no choice but to negotiate." He looked up at her. "I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't a movie. People are going to die. Maybe us, if we're not careful." "I understand." "Do you? Because once we start this, there's no going back. You can't unring this bell." Lena thought about the past 2 weeks, about how thoroughly her old life had been dismantled, about Ethan's betrayal and the men at her door and running through the dark with Victor, about Barnes grabbing her wrist and the cold certainty that he'd never intended to let her leave that diner alive. "My bell's already rung," she said. "I'm just choosing what comes next." Victor nodded slowly. "Okay. Then we do this smart. We have one advantage. They think we're still running. They don't expect us to come to them." He outlined a plan that was equal parts audacious and insane. They'd approach the warehouse after midnight when security would be minimal. Victor would go in first, create a distraction, draw the guards away from the main office where Dmitri would be. Lena would slip in through the loading bay, make her way to Dmitri, and deliver an ultimatum. What ultimatum? She asked. That you have evidence linking the Volkovs to Ethan's murder. Documents, recordings, whatever you need to claim. You'll tell Dmitri you've given this evidence to someone trustworthy with instructions to release it if anything happens to you. The Volkovs get exposed or they leave you alone. Their choice. Will he believe that? He'll believe I'm devious enough to set that up. And he'll believe you're smart enough to use it. Victor met her eyes. The trick is selling it. You have to make him think you're willing to burn his entire operation to the ground if he doesn't back off. And if he calls the bluff? Then we go to plan B, which is? Victor pulled a handgun from his bag and set it on the table. You shoot him. Lena stared at the weapon. She'd held guns before in the ER, removing them from patients' clothing, cataloging them as evidence, but she'd never fired one, never even considered it. I can't kill someone, she said. You can if your life depends on it, and it might. Victor, listen to me. His voice was firm but not unkind. I know what I'm asking. I know it goes against everything you are, but you need to be ready for the possibility that talking doesn't work, that Dmitri decides you're more trouble alive than dead. If that happens, if it comes down to him or you, I need to know you'll do what's necessary. She picked up the gun. It was heavier than she expected, cold and solid in her hand. The weight of it felt like a promise and a threat all at once. Show me how to use it, she said quietly. They spent the next few hours in the woods behind the house. Victor taught her the mechanics. How to load, how to aim, how to squeeze the trigger instead of pulling, how to keep firing if the first shot didn't drop the target. Most people hesitate, he said, standing behind her as she lined up a shot at a tree. They think about what they're doing, about the person on the other end. That hesitation gets them killed. So don't think, just act. Exactly. You make the decision to pull the trigger before you're in the moment. Commit to it mentally. Then when the time comes, your body just executes what your mind already decided. Lena fired. The recoil jolted through her arm, the sound impossibly loud even with the ear protection Victor had insisted on. The tree bark splintered about 6 inches left of where she'd aimed. Again, Victor said, and keep both eyes open. You need peripheral vision. She fired again. Closer this time. By the 20th shot, she was consistently hitting the target area. Not perfect, but functional. Good enough, Victor said. In a real situation, you'll be close range. You don't need to be a marksman. You just need to be willing. That night, Lena couldn't eat. Her stomach was twisted in knots, mind racing through everything that could go wrong. Victor seemed calm, methodical, checking weapons and equipment with the same focus he'd applied to everything else. How do you do it? She asked as he loaded magazines. Stay so calm before something like this? Practice. I've done this enough times that the fear becomes background noise. You acknowledge it, then you move past it. Does it ever go away? The fear? No. And you shouldn't want it to. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you from getting careless. He looked at her. You want to back out? Now's the time. I can do this alone. And if you die? Then you run. I've got money stashed in 3 different locations. Documents, new identity, everything you need. You disappear, and you don't look back. That's your backup plan? You die and I run? It's a realistic backup plan. Better than both of us dying. Lena stood pacing the small kitchen. I'm not letting you die for me. That's not how this ends. Sometimes that's exactly how it ends. The person with less to lose sacrifices themselves so the person with a future gets to keep it. What makes you think you have less to lose? Victor was quiet for a moment. Because I've already lost everything that mattered. My parents, Sophia, Maria. The man I could have been if I'd made different choices. All I've got left is making sure someone else doesn't end up like me. So if dying accomplishes that, then it's a good death. The resignation in his voice made her angry. That's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. That's reality. No, that's you giving up. Deciding you're not worth saving because you've done terrible things, but you've also done good things. You saved me. That has to count for something. It counts, but it doesn't erase the rest. Nothing erases anything. We're all just the sum of our choices, good and bad. And you get to keep choosing. You don't have to die tonight to prove you're not the person you used to be. Victor looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. When did you get so wise? Somewhere between getting kidnapped by the mob and learning to shoot a gun. It's been a transformative couple of weeks. He almost smiled. Almost. They left the safe house at 11 p.m., driving through darkness towards Seattle. Lena watched the city lights grow brighter as they approached, feeling the weight of the gun tucked into her jacket. Victor had given her a small .38 revolver, simple and reliable. 5 shots, he'd said. Make them count. The warehouse district was exactly as desolate as she'd imagined. Abandoned buildings, broken streetlights, the kind of place where bad things happened and nobody looked too closely. Victor parked 3 blocks away and they approached on foot. Last chance, he said. Stop asking me that. They split up 2 buildings away from the target. Victor moved like a shadow, utterly silent despite his size. Lena tried to imitate him, grateful for the dark clothes he'd insisted she wear. She made her way to the loading bay entrance, exactly where Victor said it would be. The door was locked, but Victor had given her a small tool that made quick work of it. The click of the lock disengaging sounded impossibly loud in the quiet night. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, full of crates and shadows. She could hear voices from somewhere ahead, men talking in Russian, laughing at something. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure they could hear it. A distant explosion shattered the quiet. Shouts erupted from the front of the building. Victor's distraction. The voices she'd heard ran toward the sound, leaving the path clear. Lena moved deeper into the warehouse, following the mental map Victor had drilled into her. The office would be on the 2nd floor, overlooking the main floor. She found the stairs, started climbing. A door at the top. She paused, hand on the knob, giving herself one final moment to turn back. Then she pushed it open. Dmitry Volkov sat behind a desk, looking at a laptop screen. He didn't seem surprised to see her. If anything, he looked amused. Lena Carter, he said in accented English. I wondered if you would be bold enough to come here. We need to talk. Yes, I think we do. He gestured to a chair. Please, sit. She stayed standing, hand in her jacket pocket, wrapped around the gun. I have evidence, documents linking your organization to Ethan's murder. Financial records showing the money he stole. Testimony from people who witnessed what happened. You're lying. Try me. I've given everything to a lawyer with instructions to release it if anything happens to me. You kill me, you get federal attention you can't afford. Or you leave me alone and this all goes away. Dmitry studied her, then shook his head. You are brave. Foolish, but brave. However, you are forgetting something important. What's that? Victor Reyes is very good at his job, but he is not good enough to fight his way out of this building against 12 armed men. He pressed a button on his desk. I knew he would come for me. I have been preparing. The sounds of gunfire echoed from below. Not the sporadic pops of Victor's distraction. This was sustained, multiple weapons. A firefight. Let him go, Lena said. This is between you and me. It stopped being between anyone when you chose to involve yourself in matters you do not understand. Dmitry stood. Victor has been a useful asset over the years, but he made a critical error in judgment when he decided you were worth more than his professional reputation. Now you both pay for that error. Detective Barnes walked into the office, gun drawn. Ms. Carter, we meet again. 2 birds, Dmitry said. Very efficient. The gunfire below intensified. Lena heard Victor's voice shouting something, then more shots. He was outnumbered and running out of time. Barnes moved closer to her. Gun, slowly, 2 fingers. She pulled the revolver from her pocket, held it by the grip with her thumb and forefinger. Barnes reached for it. She shot him in the chest. The decision Victor had told her to make beforehand. The commitment to pull the trigger. It had all happened in the hours before this moment. Now her body just executed. Barnes staggered back, surprise on his face, blood spreading across his shirt. She fired again. He fell. Dmitry was already drawing his own weapon. Lena turned, fired twice more. Both shots went wide, hitting the wall behind him. He returned fire and she dove behind the desk as bullets punched through the wood. Her hand shook as she looked at the revolver. 1 shot left. Dmitry's footsteps circled the desk. She could hear him breathing, could smell gunpowder and blood. You killed a cop, he said conversationally. Federal prison for the rest of your life, even if you survived the next 30 seconds. Was it worth it? Lena thought about Marco in the ER. about all the times she'd fought to save lives, about the oath she'd taken, first do no harm, about the woman she'd been who believed in rules and systems and justice. That woman would have surrendered, would have trusted that the system would protect her. But that woman was dead, had died the moment Ethan sold her to save himself, had been buried in the past 2 weeks of violence and fear and learning exactly what the world was really like under all its civilized pretenses. What rose in her place was someone harder, someone who understood that survival sometimes meant becoming the very thing you'd spent your life fighting against. She stood up. Dmitri was 3 feet away, gun pointed at her chest. She raised the revolver, sighted down the barrel exactly as Victor had taught her. "Don't," Dmitri said. She pulled the trigger. The bullet caught him in the throat. He dropped, gasping, hands clutching at the wound. Lena watched him die with a detachment that should have scared her. Instead, she just felt tired. The gunfire below had stopped. She ran to the stairs, descended, and found Victor standing in the middle of the warehouse floor, surrounded by bodies. Blood soaked his shirt, but he was standing, alive. "You're okay," she said, relief flooding through her. "More or less? You?" "I killed them, Barnes and Dmitri. I shot them both." Victor crossed to her, checked her for injuries. "You did what you had to do. How do you feel?" How did she feel? She had just killed 2 men. Should have been in shock, breaking down, devastated by what she'd done. Instead, she felt clear, like something that had been clouding her vision had finally lifted. "I feel like I want to go somewhere far away and never think about any of this again," she said. "That can be arranged." Victor pulled out his phone, made a quick call. "Cleanup crew will be here in 20 minutes. We need to be gone in 15. They spent 10 minutes wiping down surfaces, collecting shell casings, removing any evidence they'd been there. Victor was thorough, professional. This wasn't his first crime scene. As they worked, Lena realized what they'd done. They'd murdered the head of a criminal organization and a police detective. There would be consequences, investigations. Someone would come looking for answers. "What happens now?" she asked as they headed for the exit. "Now we disappear. Really disappear. New identities, new city, new lives." He paused at the door. "I have contacts who owe me favors. They can make us ghosts. But Lena, you need to understand, once we do this, there's no going back. Your old life is over, permanently." She thought about her apartment, her job, her parents in California, about the future she'd imagined before Ethan destroyed it. All of it was already gone. She'd just been holding on to the ghost of it, pretending there was something to go back to. "I don't want to go back," she said. "I want to go forward." They drove through the night, putting miles between themselves and the warehouse. Victor made calls, arranged things, spoke in code to people whose names Lena never learned. By dawn, they were in a different car with different plates, heading east. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Texas first, Houston. I have a friend there who specializes in new identities. He'll set us up with documents, backgrounds, everything we need." "Us?" Victor glanced at her. "You think I'm sending you off alone after everything that just happened? We're in this together now. Partners." "Partners in what?" "In staying alive, in building something new, in not being the people we were." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm done with the killing, Lena. Done with working for criminals and taking lives for money. What happened last night, that was the last time. I'm out." "Just like that?" "Just like that. You made me realize something when you said I kept choosing this life. You were right. I've been choosing it every day, making excuses for why I couldn't leave. But I can. I am, starting now." Lena watched the landscape roll past, forests giving way to plains, the Pacific Northwest fading into memory behind them. "What will we do? If not that, I don't know, something normal. Something that doesn't involve guns or death or looking over our shoulders every minute." He almost smiled. "Maybe I'll open a bar. Maybe you'll go back to nursing under a different name. Maybe we'll figure it out as we go." "That sounds impossibly optimistic." "Yeah, it does. But I'm choosing to believe it anyway." They stopped at a motel outside Spokane, paid cash, and slept for 14 hours straight. When Lena woke, she found Victor at the small table, working on a laptop. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Checking the news, making sure our cleanup worked." He turned the screen toward her. No mention of Dmitri yet. Barnes either. The Volkovs are probably handling it quietly, don't want police attention. How long before someone notices? Days, maybe. But by then we'll be ghosts, new names, new faces, new everything. He closed the laptop. How are you feeling? Really? Lena sat on the edge of the bed, considering. She'd killed 2 men less than 24 hours ago. She should have been devastated, should have been drowning in guilt and horror at what she'd become. Instead, she felt a strange sense of peace, like she'd been carrying a weight she didn't know was there and had finally set it down. I feel like I survived something I wasn't supposed to survive, she said slowly. And now I get to decide what comes next. For the first time in my life, I'm not following someone else's plan or living up to someone else's expectations. I'm just free. Freedom's scary, terrifying, but better than the alternative. She looked at him. Thank you for saving me, for teaching me, for not letting me stay the person who would have died in that apartment. You saved yourself, Lena. I just gave you the tools. They reached Houston 3 days later. Victor's contact was a wiry man named Cisco who worked out of a print shop and asked no questions. He took their photos, typed information into a computer, and 2 hours later handed them driver's licenses, social security cards, birth certificates. Lena Carter was gone. In her place was Emma Walsh, 29, originally from Denver, no criminal record, clean credit history. You don't exist before 5 years ago, Cisco explained. But that's fine. Lots of people don't. You got a job, paid your taxes, lived a quiet life. Nobody looks too close at quiet. Victor had become Thomas Reed, construction worker, same age, same backstory. They were 2 ordinary people with ordinary lives and no connection to anything that had happened in Seattle. Where to now? Victor, Thomas, asked as they left the print shop. Somewhere warm, Lena, Emma said. Somewhere I can hear myself think. Somewhere that doesn't remind me of rain and darkness and running for my life. They ended up in Austin, found a small apartment near the university, got jobs that paid cash and didn't ask too many questions. Victor worked construction like his new identity suggested. Lena found work at a free clinic, helping uninsured patients, using her skills without the burden of hospital bureaucracy. Weeks turned into months. The news eventually reported that Dmitry Volkov and Detective Marcus Barnes had been found dead in a warehouse, apparent casualties of a gang war. The investigation went nowhere. The Volkovs made no move to pursue whoever had killed their leader. As far as the world was concerned, it was a tragic but unsurprising end for men involved in criminal enterprise. Lena and Victor were careful. They maintained their new identities, kept their heads down, built quiet lives that attracted no attention. They didn't talk about Seattle. Didn't talk about that night in the warehouse. It existed as a shared memory they both chose not to revisit. One evening, 6 months after they'd arrived in Austin, they sat on their apartment balcony watching the sunset. It was warm, the air thick with humidity, and the smell of barbecue from somewhere nearby. Do you regret it? Victor asked suddenly. What you did. What you became. Lena thought about the question. Did she regret shooting Barnes and Dmitry? Did she regret choosing survival over principle? Did she regret becoming someone capable of taking a life? I regret that it was necessary, she said finally. I regret that the world works the way it does. But I don't regret staying alive, and I don't regret finding out I was stronger than I thought. That's a politician's answer. It's an honest answer. She looked at him. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm not ashamed either. It happened. I survived. I moved forward. That's all any of us can do. Victor nodded slowly. I think about Sophia sometimes. Wonder what she'd think of me now, if she'd be proud that I finally got out, or disappointed that it took so long. I think she'd be glad you're alive and trying to be better. Maybe. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere in the city, people were living normal lives, worrying about normal things, oblivious to the violence and darkness that existed just beneath the surface. Lena had lived in that ignorance once, had believed that safety was a given, that justice prevailed, that good people were rewarded and bad people punished. She knew better now, knew that safety was something you fought for, that justice was often a luxury, that good and bad were less clear-cut than she'd been taught. She'd lost things in the past months. Her innocence, her faith in systems, her belief that the world was fundamentally fair, but she'd gained things too, strength, agency. The knowledge that she could face impossible situations and come out the other side. I was thinking, Victor said, about the future, what we do next. And I want to help people. Really help them, I mean. Not just with money or jobs, but the way you help those people at the clinic, making a real difference. You want to be a nurse? He laughed. Not exactly, but maybe something adjacent. EMT, maybe. Firefighter. Something where I use my skills to save lives instead of taking them. That's a good goal. Yeah, it is. He paused. What about you? What do you want? What did she want? A year ago, the answer would have been simple: financial security, a stable relationship, a house in a nice neighborhood. The standard American dream. Now, those things felt hollow, meaningless compared to what she'd learned about herself. I want to matter, she said. I want my life to mean something beyond just existing. I want to help people who fall through the cracks the way I almost did. People who need someone to believe in them when everyone else has given up. We could do that together. Build something. A foundation, maybe. Help women get out of bad situations. Give them resources, protection, a fresh start. The idea took root immediately. They had the skills, the experience, the understanding of exactly what people in desperate situations needed because they'd both been there. I like it, Lena said. I really like it. They spent the next month planning. Victor, she still thought of him that way privately, though she was careful to use Thomas out loud, used his contacts to set up a nonprofit. Lena reached out to social workers and domestic violence advocates, built relationships, learned the landscape. 6 months later, they opened the doors to New Start Foundation. The name was Victor's choice. Simple, direct, promising exactly what it delivered. They helped their first client a week later, a woman named Sandra, whose boyfriend had nearly killed her and whose family had turned their backs. Lena sat with her, listened to her story, saw her own fear and desperation reflected in Sandra's eyes. You're safe now, Lena told her. We'll help you disappear if that's what you need. New city, new identity, new life. Nobody has to stay trapped, Sandra cried. Lena held her hand and remembered what it felt like to be terrified and alone and convinced there was no way out. She'd been lucky. She'd had Victor. Now she could be that for other people. The foundation grew. Word spread through networks of people who knew someone who needed help. They helped dozens of women in the first year. Some just needed temporary shelter. Others needed the full treatment, new identities, relocation, protection from pursuers who wouldn't give up easily. Victor handled the security side. Lena handled the emotional support and logistics. They made a good team, better than good. They understood each other in ways that went beyond words. Shared trauma had forged them into something stronger than either had been alone. 2 years after leaving Seattle, Lena stood in their office looking at photos on the wall. Success stories. Women who'd escaped and rebuilt and survived. Each one represented a life saved, a future made possible. We did good, Victor said, coming to stand beside her. We did, she agreed. You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't sent that text to the wrong number? She considered it. If she'd double-checked Ethan's contact before hitting send, if she'd never connected with the stranger who turned out to be her salvation, I'd probably be dead, she said, or still trapped in that life, working myself to death for a man who didn't value me. Either way, I wouldn't be here, wouldn't be doing this. No regrets then? About the text? None. About what came after. She paused. I regret that people had to die. I regret the violence. But I don't regret surviving it. And I don't regret who I became on the other side. Victor nodded. He'd said something similar once in a different conversation. They'd both made their peace with the impossible choices they'd faced. Not because those choices were right or wrong in any absolute sense, but because they'd been the only options available in that moment. I got a call today, he said. From Seattle. One of my old contacts. Lena tensed. And? The Volkov organization is gone. Fell apart after Dmitri died. Internal fighting, arrests, the whole thing collapsed. Nobody's looking for us anymore. We're clear. The relief was profound. For 2 years, she'd carried the fear that someone would connect the dots, would figure out that the dead nurse and the missing enforcer had been responsible for Dmitri's death. Now that fear could finally be set aside. So we're really free, she said. We're really free. That night, they celebrated with cheap wine on their balcony, toasting to survival and second chances and the strange paths that led to redemption. Lena thought about the woman she'd been, naive, trusting, willing to accept whatever life handed her. That woman wouldn't recognize her now, wouldn't understand the choices she'd made or the person she'd become. And that was okay. Growth meant leaving behind the parts of yourself that couldn't survive what the world threw at you. It meant becoming harder in some ways, softer in others. It meant learning when to fight and when to run and when to stand your ground no matter the cost. She'd learned all of that in the worst way possible. But she'd learned it, and now she used those lessons to help others learn them too, hopefully without quite so much violence and trauma. What are you thinking about? Victor asked. How far we've come. How much has changed? She looked at him. Do you ever miss it, the old life? Which part? The killing or the being terrified every moment? Fair point. Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, he admitted. There was no ambiguity. I had a job, I did it, I got paid. No moral complexity. No wondering if I was doing the right thing. And now? Now everything's complicated, but it's a better kind of complicated. The kind where I'm trying to build instead of destroy. The kind where I go to bed knowing I made someone's life better instead of ending it. He smiled. I like this better. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence as the city hummed around them. Lena thought about all the women they'd helped, all the lives they'd changed. Each one was a small victory against the darkness that had almost consumed her. She'd been a victim once, had been weak and scared and convinced she couldn't survive on her own. Then circumstances had forced her to discover she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. Strong enough to kill when necessary. Strong enough to rebuild when the killing was done. Strong enough to transform trauma into purpose. Victor had given her the tools, but she'd done the work herself. Had made the impossible choices, pulled the trigger, survived the aftermath. That strength was hers now. Nobody could take it away. She wasn't the same person who'd sent that angry text to a wrong number. That person was gone, burned away in the fire of everything that followed. What remained was tempered steel, harder, sharper, more resilient. Not perfect, not innocent, but survivable. And in a world that seemed designed to break people, survivable was more than enough. It was everything. Years would pass. The foundation would grow. They'd help hundreds of women find their way out of darkness. Some would succeed, some would fail. Such was the nature of rescue work. You saved who you could and mourned those you couldn't. But every single one would matter. Every life touched would ripple outward in ways impossible to measure. That was the lesson Lena had learned through blood and fear and transformation. That one person could make a difference. That choosing to act, even when terrified, even when the odds were against you, even when the cost was almost too high to bear, that choice mattered. She'd made that choice on a fire escape in Seattle. Had chosen to take Victor's hand instead of waiting for the men at her door. Every choice after that had flowed from that single moment of decision. Now she helped others make the same choice. To fight instead of surrender. To transform instead of break. To survive whatever hell they were living through and come out the other side as someone new. Someone stronger. Someone who'd learned that victim was a temporary state, not a permanent identity. Someone who understood that the world was brutal, but that brutality didn't have to define you. Lena looked at Victor. Thomas, she reminded herself, though it hardly mattered anymore, and saw her own journey reflected in his face. They'd both been broken, both been rebuilt, both chosen to use their scars to help others instead of letting those wounds define them. To second chances, she said, raising her wine glass. To second chances, he echoed. They drank, and somewhere in the city, another woman was making the choice that would change her life. Another person was discovering they were stronger than they knew. Another victim was becoming a survivor. And when they reached out for help, Lena and Victor would be there. Not as saviors, but as guides who'd walked the same dark path and knew the way through. Because that was what survivors did. They survived. And then they helped others do the same. It wasn't redemption, exactly. The things they'd done couldn't be undone. The lives they'd taken couldn't be given back. But it was something. A balance, perhaps. A way of making the world fractionally better instead of worse. In the end, that was all anyone could hope for. To leave things a little better than they found them. To help where they could. To to survive the darkness and then shine a light for those still trapped in it. Lena had found her light, had become it in her own way. And that transformation from victim to survivor to guide was the real story. Not the violence or the fear or the running, but the choice to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep becoming someone worthy of the second chance she'd been given. The sun set fully, and the city lights came on one by one. Lena and Victor sat together in the gathering darkness, two ghosts building new lives from the ashes of the old. Not perfect, not innocent, but alive and trying and making a difference one person at a time. And really, what more could anyone ask for than that?